In June 323 BC, the most powerful man in the world was dying of a fever in Babylon, at just 32. In our history, he died, and his empire tore itself apart within days. But what if the fever broke, and he opened his eyes? 32 years old, half the known world already conquered. And now, time. In our history, the moment he died, it all came apart. He left no clear heir, only a famous last phrase: the empire should go to the strongest. His generals, the Diadochi, turned on each other for 40 years. The greatest empire the world had ever seen was carved into pieces before his body was even cold. Everything he built outlived him by barely a breath. Now, the honest part. Alexander's empire was held together by one thing: Alexander. It had no shared law, no stable succession, no real bureaucracy that could survive him. So even if he lives, nothing is guaranteed. His army is exhausted after 11 years and 8,000 miles. His men have already mutinied once at the edge of India and refused to march further. A living Alexander does not get a finished empire. He gets a second chance. And 1,000 new problems. Our point of divergence is medical and almost mundane. The fever breaks. Perhaps it was typhoid, perhaps poison, perhaps the endless drinking, but this time his body wins. And with it, another man survives who died in our timeline just months before. His closest companion, Hephaestion. Alexander wakes changed. He has stared into the void where his empire shatters, and he decides, for the first time, to stop conquering and start building. In our timeline, his next campaign was Arabia, more conquest. Here, the changed king cancels it. Instead of marching, he does what he never had time to do. He governs. He pushes his policy of fusion, Macedonians and Persians in one administration, one coinage, one network of roads and royal scribes. He plants Greek cities from Egypt to India and fills them with libraries and law courts. For the first time, the empire is being built to outlive the man. Give it a generation, and something new is growing. The soldiers who married Persian and Bactrian women, thousands of them in a single mass wedding Alexander staged, now have children who belong to both worlds. Greek and Persian gods share the same temples. Greek geometry meets Babylonian astronomy meets Indian mathematics, all under one roof. This is not a Macedonian empire ruling foreigners anymore. It is becoming a single fused civilization, stretching from the Adriatic to the Indus. And now, the empire looks west, to a world that, in our history, Alexander never reached. His fleet takes Carthage, the great trading power of the Mediterranean, and turns it into a partner. And on the coast of Italy, a small, tough farming republic called Rome, barely a regional power in 323 BC, suddenly finds a world empire on its doorstep. In our timeline, Rome had 200 years to grow before facing anyone its own size. Here, it has almost none. But even a living Alexander is still mortal. And here lies his hardest problem. Who follows him? In our history, his only legitimate son, Alexander IV, was born after his death and murdered as a child. Here, that son grows up at his father's side, trained not just to conquer, but to rule. Alexander does the one thing he never did in reality. He builds a succession, a council of fused nobility, a named heir, a system meant to survive the day the great man finally dies. A single connected empire does for knowledge what it does for trade. It removes the borders. Greek engineers read Babylonian star charts. Indian numerals and Persian astronomy flow into the same libraries in Alexandria and Babylon. Ideas that, in our timeline, took 1,000 years to travel now cross the empire in a single season. This is the scientific head start the ancient world never got. Because in our history, the moment it could have happened, the empire fell apart. For Rome, this changes everything. In our history, Rome grew slowly, learned war against neighbors its own size, and eventually built an empire of its own. Here, it meets a superpower before it is ready. Maybe Rome fights and is broken. Maybe it becomes a clever client state, absorbing Greek ideas as a junior partner. Either way, there is no independent Roman Empire, no Latin Europe as we know it. The whole future of the West bends around one Macedonian who simply did not die. Now, stretch it across centuries. Instead of fracturing into warring kingdoms, the empire holds. A single Hellenistic Persian civilization reaching from the Atlantic coast to India. Koine Greek is the common tongue from Spain to the Ganges. One coinage, one body of law, one connected web of trade and science. The center of the world is not Rome. It is Alexandria and Babylon. And it never suffers the 1,000-year fracture our history called the fall of the ancient world. And with no collapse, the knowledge never stops compounding. The steam toys of Heron of Alexandria are not curiosities anymore. They are prototypes that keep improving. Water power, gearing, and precision metalwork advance for centuries without interruption. This is the great what if inside the what if. An ancient world that never fell might have reached an industrial age not in the 1700s, but perhaps 1,000 years sooner. Steam and mathematics in a world that still wears a chiton. Push it to today, and the world is unrecognizable. Its lingua franca is not English, but a modern descendant of Greek. Its capital is not in the West, but somewhere between Alexandria and Babylon. There was no fall of Rome because there was no Roman Empire to fall, and no Dark Ages to climb out of. A single thread of civilization runs unbroken for over 2,000 years. All of it because one feverish night in Babylon ended differently. And when this ancient modern world finally reaches for the sky, it carries a very old symbol. Its first rocket is heavy and riveted, streaked with dust, and painted on its flank is the 16-ray star of a Macedonian king who, 2,500 years earlier, refused to die. It rises on a pillar of fire from the same deserts his armies once crossed on foot. And the empire that never fell leaves the earth. But before you wish for it, look at the shadow. A world held together by one brilliant man is a world with no check on that one man. No Roman Republic, no Senate, no slow tradition of law limiting the ruler, just a god-king and his heirs forever. This empire might have given us the stars 1,000 years early. It might also have given us 1,000 years of kneeling. Progress and freedom are not the same thing. We escaped the Mongols by an accident. We lost Alexandria by an accident. And maybe we were handed our messy, divided, argumentative freedom by the smallest accident of all. A fever in Babylon that a young king simply did not survive. History is a chain of tiny accidents. And this one, we may have been lucky to keep. So which accident should we rewrite next? A Rome that got gunpowder? Vikings who stayed in America? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe to History Rewritten, and let's keep pulling on the thread of the past, one accident at a time.